Welcome to the MSL 411, a podcast designed to equip both aspiring and experienced MSLs with the resources they need to level up their career toolkit. The heart of this podcast is to take the same industry knowledge and advice that we share with our own candidates and make it available and accessible to anyone looking for answers. So if you have questions, you've come to the right place. We're here to give you the 411. And without further ado, let's dive right in.
Hi, welcome to MSL 411. Today's topic is a portion of the interview process that is make or break and really opens up the interview process to help or harm a candidate. So we are going to be talking about MSL presentations today.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with MSLs all the time through the presentation process, helping them get ready and passing along instructions from the hiring manager. And Ashley, I know that you worked with a ton of candidates through this process, and so you're probably no better person to ask than you. But I know you've given presentation instructions to many in MSL, and in your experience, what are some of the most common expectations that you hear from hiring managers for candidates preparing?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say on this topic. There's two kind of general presentation scenarios that I think mostly define what we see with our clients specifically. And that's going to be a topic of choice, or it's going to be company provided materials. I would say most of the time it's going to be topic of your choice. And most of the time you're asked to give a presentation as well. But there's some variation. And within the company provided materials, it can be sometimes a slide deck that the company provides you, and they ask you to choose, 20 or so slides for the presentation. Sometimes it is publication, and they ask you to create a presentation using that information. So a couple different approaches. Journal clubs, sometimes I feel like that's not quite as common. But those are generally what they see. And so when we're talking about the topic of your choice presentation, what would you say are a couple of things to keep in mind for that?
Yeah, great question. I think if you kind of back up and look at the reason for why they've asked you to do that, of course, if they're providing you materials, they're mostly wanting you to just present. They want to see how you do in that situation, not expecting you to be the expert. So when it's a topic of your choice, it really opens up the door. They do want you to be the expert. So picking something that you are the expert in, something that you know backwards and forwards, something that if you're faced with a question, you have all the answers, or you know where to find the answers if need be, and something that is going to be relevant to your audience. So of course, if you're presenting to an oncology company, you don't want to come in and present on diabetes or something like that. But if you're presenting to a nephrology company and you present on solid organ transplant, of course, that's going to be pretty relevant to them. So just kind of keeping in mind who your audience is, what's going to be interesting to them. Maybe not brand new information altogether, but something where you can be the instructor, you can teach them a little bit. So just keeping those things in mind as you decide what topic you're going to present on, something you're familiar with. It can be something from your current or past employer. Of course, just remove the company logo from those slides. But yeah, it's something that you're comfortable delivering and know all the information.
Yeah. And talking about the how to choose what you're going to choose. And also one thing I would add as well is choosing something that you're passionate about, because that really comes through in the interview process. I've had scenarios with candidates before where some of the feedback that we've gotten from the hiring manager is, we don't really know why they chose this topic. They didn't really seem very interested in it, or just kind of excited by it. And when it's something that you're choosing, it should be the thing that you're the most excited about,
right?
Be it your previous company's product or something that you just is maybe a passion project for you. When you're thinking about the how and the why you chose something, you want that enthusiasm to be relayed through that.
Yeah, and that can play a part in your storytelling as well. So that's a really great point to bring up. Thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah. So what would you say to our listeners about how to structure this presentation?
Well, of course, we talked about picking a topic where you're an expert. So you want to cover the content very well. You want to provide data and information. Again, this is a chance where you're coming in and you have the opportunity to be the expert. So you're wanting to teach them and show them how you communicate complex information. How you do it for this topic is the same way you would do it for their product and their information. So they want to see that. It's always a good idea also to have backup slides prepared and in place. Now, leaving them out, if you don't get a chance to cover them, it's not going to hurt your presentation at all. But if a question comes up, isn't it great to just be able to say, oh my gosh, I have a slide for that. Let me just pull that up. So thinking about the questions that you might face from your interviewers and going ahead and building a slide to kind of answer some of those questions, if it's data related, if it's about some of the clinical trials and things that happen there, just have those ready to go if it's something that comes to mind that might come up. On the flip hand of that, knowing where you can omit slides if you need. So if you're getting close to hitting your allotted time and you need to shorten in the spur of the moment, knowing what you can ditch and still be able to get your points across is going to be super important as well. So just being familiar with that. Last thing I would say is just to cite your resources or cite your sources. So you always want to make sure that you back up everything you're presenting, all the facts and data that you're giving. You want to just be able to have those cited so you can refer to that really easily. So that's going to be something important as well.
Yeah, it's just one more thing that, if you get a question, you have that citation right there. That'll make you feel really confident when you're in the moment in that presentation setting to be like, well, actually, I have this information right here. Whether it's on the slide or you have, a slide at the end that has all of your citations, making sure to have that is hugely important. I would also add that employers are really looking to see a mix of disease state information and clinical data. It should be both, unless they cite otherwise. You really want to have a good mix of both versus just one versus the other. And within that, creating a story, that kind of narrative storytelling is so important with a presentation because it's really what allows something to stick in a person's mind is that kind of narrative. The last thing I will add is making it visually interesting as well. You want something that's conservative. You don't want it too busy. Too many pictures is kind of something that we correct a little bit. And clean, but not like a boring white background. You want to throw a little color on there, but you want something that is visually clean. You never know how they are going to be watching it, whether it's a small screen on their computer or maybe even their phone if somebody's having to watch it on the go. Or if it's being, projected on a larger screen, maybe you're giving it in person. Whatever the case is, you want to have something that's clean and very visually appealing. You don't want the details of the presentation to be distracting from the story that you're trying to tell, from the disease state information that you're trying to provide. You want that to all be nice and tidy.
Great point. Thank you for adding. I know you probably have some other tips and tricks that you share with your candidates just as they're getting ready to go in for the presentation, those last little pointers and reminders. What are some of those that come to mind?
Well, kind of stepping away from the presentation itself and to more the delivery of it, you want to dress and act as if you are giving the presentation in person, even if you're doing it virtually. I'm not really a big fan of the party on the bottom, business up top. I'm not really about that life. I think it's a confidence and a mentality thing. When you look good, you're going to feel good and you're going to feel confident and present well. So that's just my personal tip. But, go for the suit and tie, do a nice dress, nice blouse, just as you would if you were going in person to meet with somebody. And if you are going in person, which we're seeing more now than we did last year, and years before, of course. But if you are going in person, be the person that is overly prepared. We call it doomsday prepping around our office, but do it. Be overly prepared. Have a backup option, whether it is having it emailed to yourself and on a USB drive if you need to pivot quickly. I've had people that will bring a printed out copy of their presentation with them just in case they find themselves in a situation where the technology is not working, which happens. And keep these things in mind when you are delivering in person. Share your attention and eye contact around the room. It's a little hard to do that when you're in a virtual setting because sometimes you can't see people depending on what platform you're using. But really sharing the attention, another great way to make each person feel individually involved and engaged, regardless of what their role is, if they're HR or they're the medical director, bringing copies of your resume for each person that you are meeting with and really taking the time to express to them that I thought about you being here. Thank you for the time that you took to be here. You'll of course send each person an individual thank you note, but those little details I think show the kind of meticulous nature that MSLs tend to have and need to have for the role and show intentionality. I prepared this for you. So a couple of tips for that in-person interview. My last tip is going to go back to the virtual. Stay on time. This is very important. We always encourage people to record themselves, especially if you are trying to break into the MSL role. This presentation that you're giving is not something that you give often for your job. Take the time to time yourself giving the presentation. I always recommend people utilize the record function on PowerPoint. You can record the video, audio, and the slides all together so you can see how you would deliver it. And you can do it through PowerPoint. I'm sure there's other ways that you can do it as well, but it's all right there, easy for you. Utilize these features. They're for your benefit. They will help you feel more polished. If you have a great MSL mentor who can tune in and watch you give your presentation, they're going to have fantastic background knowledge that they can provide you from their own personal experience, or maybe even related to the disease state information that you're trying to convey. But they can offer you a lot of perspective because they've done it themselves differently than I could.
Yeah.
But just some of the skill set development when it comes to making sure that presentation is polished. That's really what separates candidates. A lot of times in the interviews, you can have two candidates going into an interview where you have one that on paper looks fantastic. They've got the right therapeutic experience. Maybe they work for a competitor. I've had this situation before where that person didn't interview as well as another person who wasn't working for a competitor, wasn't in that exact disease state, but their presentation skills, how polished they were, the enthusiasm that was relayed through the delivery of their presentation and in that portion of the interview was really ultimately what ended up giving them the job because of the way they showed up in that last stage of the process. So
true.
Hugely important. Those are my general tips that I share for everybody. Of course, we kind of tailor things when we're working with candidates in the actual interview setting. But as far as general tips go, that is what I have.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, these are great tips. I feel like practice is key when you're doing this, just like you mentioned. Utilize those resources. And I know even as recruiters, I've sat through presentations before. I can't help with the science, but I can say, you talked a little fast, or, I couldn't see that slide very well. So, use whatever friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, mentors,
whoever's willing. Yes.
Practice is key, but I think these are some great tips and tricks to get people started on their way.
Absolutely. And it's such an important part of the interview process. We want to help you as much as we can to get you through this part. So if you have specific questions for us, text us. Use the link in the show notes. We would love to answer your questions. You will have to say who you are so we can get back to you because it is anonymous. But you can also message us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to answer any questions that you have. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share the link, let your friends know, and of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you want more information on today's topic, please feel free to reach out. Be sure to check back soon as we continue to explore the topics that matter most to you in medical affairs.